In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at three things: rules pertaining to rooms, corridor construction, and how to import and trace over maps. In our first tutorial on maps, we showed you the basics of how to draw a map consisting of rooms and corridors. Here I'd like to discuss a few considerations that you should be aware of when drawing rooms with DungeonBuilder. First, rooms can't be drawn on top of one another. For example, let me try to take this rectangular room and put it on top of this rectangular room, and I get an error message. So DungeonBuilder will prevent you from putting a room on top of another room. You have to put it out in the blank space. The same is true if you try to move rooms on top of another room. Once again, you get an error message and the room is attached to your cursor until you place it someplace where there's no other room. Now, while rooms cannot be placed on top of one another, they can adjoin each other quite closely. For example, you can see I can move that room right up next to the room number 7, and I can put another room here right next to room number 7 on the south side. By following this procedure, I can create continuous blocks of rooms. And although there aren't any explicit portals to pass through when going from one room to the other, because the party icon floats on top of the map, when you are in play mode, something we discussed in another video, you can easily move the party icon from room to room as the party adventures through the dungeon. Finally, all room icons are placed on the map with a default size. For example, rectangular rooms are 20 feet by 40 feet, and circles are a default size of 20-foot radius. The same is true of your semicircles up here. And you can verify this by comparing the rooms to the underlying grid pattern, which is 10 by 10. Turning to corridors, while rooms cannot be drawn on top of one another, corridors can. In fact, corridors can be drawn on top of both rooms and other corridors. This is allowed in order to create corridor intersections and to make it easier to draw room junctions. Let me show you what I mean. Here I'm going to click on the corridor icon, and I'm going to connect a corridor from this anchor point on room 0 to this side of room 5. Notice how the corridor sketch line runs over room 2. Also, when I save this map, the corridor sketch line expands to the corridor default width and remains on top of room 1. Now, we don't recommend you do this on a regular basis, but in some cases this might better reflect the effect you're trying to achieve with your dungeon. Notice that the corridor is not connected to room number 2. I can actually move number 2 out of the way. Also, in moving room number 2, I don't affect either of the two endpoint rooms, room 0 or 5. Now, if you want to avoid the situation of a corridor running over a room, all you have to do is adjust the anchor point by moving it to another location on the room. Like I'll move it to the north side of room 5 and let go, and notice how the corridor auto-adjusts around room 2. Now, where overlapping corridors can be really useful is in setting up corridor junctions. I'm going to move room 2 over here for a moment and move room 3 out of the way. And I'm going to connect room 0 to room 5. Okay. And I'm going to connect room 2 to room 3. I'm going to save that. And both the corridors will expand to the default width, which is a 10-foot wide corridor. And what you have here is a corridor junction, which can be very useful in your dungeons. This can also be a faster way of creating room junctions. I can move the circular room back to where it was, and now as opposed to connecting each corridor to the side of room number 3 here in order to get all these connections to line up, I can just leave it this way and save myself the trouble of hooking up all the anchor points. While this may not be very pretty, it is much faster to do. And when you make your maps transparent, as you will do when tracing over an imported map, this appearance issue largely goes away. Now, as you've probably noticed, the corridor sketch lines expand to the default width when you click Save. The default corridor width is 20 pixels, which equates to 10 feet, okay? I'll select this corridor here, and you can see it's 20 pixels wide. You can make your corridors up to 40 pixels wide, which would be a 20-foot wide corridor. You can also make them as small as 10 pixels, which is a 5-foot corridor. Note that you can also move your corridors after you have saved them, so you don't have to worry about positioning the corridor sketch lines perfectly. You can always tweak things later on. And you can move corridors in one of 3 ways. First, you can move the room that the corridor is attached to, and the corridor will auto-adjust its position. For example, I'll move room number 7 down here, which will change the room numbering, but that's okay. And the corridor automatically adjusts to compensate. Secondly, corridors that have 2 right angles in them, let me do one of those, like this one here, have automatic breakpoints inserted in them. You can see them here. And you can move the corridor around these breakpoints if you want to. There's actually several breakpoints in this particular corridor that allow me to adjust it. And I'll save that. And finally, as I showed you a moment ago, you can always move the anchor points for a quarter after you've connected it to. All you have to do is pull it up and reconnect it at another location, and there you go. And that's what you need to know about quarters. Okay, one of Dungeon Builder's greatest feature is the ability to import your favorite maps so that you can trace over them and then share them in real time with your friends. Using these two import buttons that you see up here, Dungeon Builder lets you import either a single map that can range from 8.5 inches by 11 inches on up to 11 inches by 17 inches. Alternatively, you can import two 8.5 by 11 maps, and you can do this for each and every level of every dungeon. If you have a single map you want to import, you click on this number 1 button. If you have two maps you want to import, you use the 2 button. Let's start off by first importing a single map, but I'm going to start on a fresh level here. I'm going to go up to the first level, which is blank, and then I'm going to import a single map. I'm going to click on the number 1 button, and it presents this screen which says you need to upload a single file that is 1000 by 1600 pixels or smaller. If you have a larger file, you can cut it into pieces before uploading it, or you can just upload it as is, and Dungeon Builder will auto-fit it to the drawing space. I don't recommend that because it can skew your image a bit. Note that you can use either a JPEG, a bitmap, or a PNG file format when doing your uploads. I'll click on the Choose File button here, and then click on this single map here. And then I'll upload it. And then depending upon the size of your map and the speed of your internet connection, it'll take a couple of seconds for your map to upload. And here you can see the map uploaded cleanly, and it looks beautiful. And what's great about this is that most of your Dungeon Builder tools can be used on your map. For example, I can zoom out to see a smaller version of my map. I can also zoom in and blow it up to a much higher level of magnification, so should I choose to do so. There you go. And I can draw on it. There is, however, one button that you cannot use. You can't use the grid button. When you click on the grid button, what it does is that blanks out the screen. It hides your map. And if you click on the grid button again, it presents the grid. Okay? However, your map is not lost. Your imported image did not get deleted. All you have to do is click on this little map icon here, this button, and your map will come back. So using these two buttons of grid and map, you can alternate back and forth between a grid view of your dungeons and an imported map view of your dungeons. The only thing to bear in mind is you can't do both at the same time. Now, if you do want to get rid of the map entirely, all you have to do is click on this little map icon with the red X through it, and that will delete the map completely from Dungeon Builder. So it's not hidden, it's deleted. If you click on this button, you'll have to re-upload your map. Now, what I'm going to do next is demonstrate the tracing function. I'm going to apply several rooms and corridors over this map, not the entire map, just a portion thereof, in order to give you a feel of how you can leverage Dungeon Builder's tremendous drawing and encounter management tools with images of all those maps and modules that you've been carrying around. But as that takes some time, I want to fast forward through this, so bear with me. Okay, I could stop at this point and leave the rooms visible if I wanted to. In some cases, like this one, where the rooms on the underlying map image are not numbered, I would probably want to keep the Dungeon Builder rooms visible so I can track the room number that the party is in. However, when your map image already has room numbers, making the rooms transparent is the best way to go. And you make the rooms transparent by selecting the no fill option for each room and then making the borders transparent as well. You can also make the corridors nearly transparent by also adjusting their fills. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, I think that's good enough. I've left a couple of variations here. You can see rooms that are completely invisible, just the number symbols remain, as well as some rooms that have invisible interiors but have borders around them, and then rooms that remained as we drew them originally. And this is what the map will look like to the Game Master. So you can choose from a variety of options of how you want your dungeon to look. Now when we get to the Play Mode tutorial, there I'll show you what the players see on their end. But I think this gives you a good idea of just how powerful the tracing capability is. Now let's take a look at how we import two images. And I'm going to go to a fresh level on that as well. I'm going to go to the second level. And I'm going to click on the 2Map Import button. And it presents the screen that allows us to identify two files to import. Now what is important to understand about importing two maps is that they should be imported in landscape mode, not portrait. So if your maps are in portrait mode, use a picture editor to rotate them 90 degrees. It is also equally important that the maps sit on top of one another in the proper order. So we recommend that you do the choose file for image 1 top first, and then do the choose file for image 2 bottom second. Let me show you how that works. I'll click on choose file for image 1. There it is. I'll choose file for image 2. There it is. And then I'll click upload and process. Once again, depending upon how large your map is and how fast your internet connection is, that will determine how long it takes to upload these files. The upload is successful. And the map looks terrific. I mean, that looks really, really nice. And what you may notice is that's kind of hard to see where one map leaves off and the other one begins. That is by design. Here is a zoom out view of the same maps, okay? And it's very hard to see the seam here unless you know what you're looking for. We want to make sure that you can line up your maps perfectly to have a very pretty image to show your friends. But let me highlight where the seam is. Scrolling down here a bit, the seam is right here in the middle of your screen. And how you can tell is because the two maps are really the same map, just one is inverted, okay? So I took the map, made a copy of it, inverted it, and then imported those two maps. And you can tell that along this line, the opposite sides of the line are mirror images of one another. Like this room right here is obviously the same room, just seen from two different angles. So I think that does a good job of showing you just how clean the import image feature is within inside Dungeon Builder. And that is how you ensure that your favorite maps never get lost. By importing them into Dungeon Builder, you will no longer have to worry about losing your hard copy maps. So don't wait, scan your old modules and maps, and let's play.